All right. Learning objective number 5. Identify situations when we should make exceptions to capital punishment. I started our very first slide. No, maybe I didn't. Okay. Let me do this now. So many of you will recall many years ago, I think it was 2013, 2011 maybe, in Arizona, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was shot in the head by a man with a Glock named Jared Lautner. By the time that Jared Lautner stopped shooting, he had killed 6 people and injured, I think, 15 others, and was immediately apprehended. He sat on trial, and it was determined by his lawyers that Jared Lautner was extremely mentally disturbed. Many of his co-workers, people who knew him in high school and college, described how Jared, during his college years, had undergone this mental change where he was just no longer the same person that he was. And psychiatrists met with Jared and did assessments of his thinking and determined that he was mentally impaired. And despite having the awareness to take a gun and take it to a crowded political rally, and despite shooting a bunch of people, they argue that Jared should not be, because of his mental impairedness, that there should be an exception made for him when considering the death penalty. Now, that was true. The judge, the jury found Jared guilty and sentenced him to like 6 or 7 life sentences in jail. He's not leaving jail, but he was found to be unfit for his crimes, and therefore an exception was made not to try him for capital punishment. So let's talk about this. Should there be exceptions made to capital punishment? Right? If you believe that anybody, looking at the work of abolitionists, for instance, right, if you believe that somebody is guilty of taking somebody else's life, and you strongly believe that punishment should be retribution, that it is the last thing that we as a society do, and that is the theory that you hold on to, that we should take the eye from the person who took the eye, that it is tooth for tooth, then does it really matter the age of the person guilty? Does it matter whether or not that person was cognizant of their decision, whether or not they had the mental ability to make a rational decision? Right? Does it matter those circumstances? Right? Because tooth for tooth, eye for eye doesn't say except in cases of this or in cases of that. So, for those of you who really adhere to this idea of retribution, that the death penalty needs to be in place, not because it deters others from committing those crimes, but because it is the only fair punishment for someone guilty of murder, do you make exceptions? Right? And how do you rationalize those exceptions? How do you ethically make that determination that, oh, yeah, eye for eye, except when the person who took my eye was 16. All right, oh, that case, he's only 16. He doesn't know better. He didn't understand he didn't understand what would happen when he pulled that trigger. Should juveniles be protected from this type of law? Should they be given this wiggle room? Should they go to juvenile court or to a juvenile detention center? Should their punishments be expunged from their record? Should they be tried differently than an adult? And if so, why? Do we still use deterrence as the theory here? Does the punishment fit the crime? Is this a way of deterring other juveniles from committing similar types of crimes? I'll tell you, I don't know, I'm no longer a juvenile, but I've seen many pop culture shows in which juveniles completely understand that the punishment will be light for them, and therefore don't feel as guilty about the crime. In fact, thinking of the TV show Breaking Bad, where I think in the first or second season there's this rival drug gang, and as Jesse and his crew begin selling drugs on their corner, this rival gang gets this young boy on a bicycle to pull the trigger, knowing that if the boy is captured or is arrested, that his punishment will be far lighter than it would be for somebody who is an adult. Right? Does that do a disservice to our society, allowing those who would like to, those who would commit those crimes, it doesn't actually deter them from doing those crimes? So, yeah, certainly some things to consider.